You're going to be making your last pass across soybeans with Roundup pretty soon, and you're thinking, you know, I've been spraying for soybean aphids for 7 years in a row. I'm just going to throw some insecticide in. Is that a good move?
All right, we're going to get into that debate right off the bat. Do you just throw insecticide in? No, you don't just throw insecticide in with anything, with any application at any time. You need to go out and look at what you got out in the field and see what you have.
Right, it's whole different than with weeds or with disease. We know that weeds are coming up. We know that disease is going to be there. We don't know if bugs are going to be there. And I don't care. You may have had the same bug for 7 years in a row. That is no guarantee you're going to have it this year. So don't go out and spray something with insecticide if you don't see any bugs. Now, let's talk about the bug threshold maybe just a little bit too.
Well, but I was thinking about this. Okay, well, maybe I'll delay my herbicide application because I think I might have some bugs. You know what? If you have really light pressure out in the field, you can probably get away with that. Or if you have weeds that are fairly easy to control, you can probably get away with that. But if you've got a field that's just weedy like crazy with some tough weeds out there, get them sprayed. Don't wait. You may have to make an extra trip. Big deal. It only costs $1 or $2 an acre to do your own spraying. It's really not that big a deal.
Yeah, let's talk about some specific insects. So early in the season, you probably had bean leaf beetles. I hope you sprayed. But if you didn't, and you're going to be facing bean leaf beetles again coming up here this summer, what do you use for insecticide and what rate do you need?
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, if you didn't spray the first time, don't worry, you'll get another shot at it. They'll be back.
Yeah, and by the way, you already lost some yield. So that's the thing too with bean leaf beetles. You have multiple generations, usually 2 generations, could be 3 generations per year depending on where you are in the country. So you want to get them controlled right away when you see them before they mate, lay eggs, and then you get another issue later in the year.
But you don't need a whole bunch of residual control. This is what I think is funny. For bean leaf beetles, you can use generally the lowest rate of any of the insecticides out there. I mean, a pint of Lorsban or
yeah, but the pyrethroids are better and cheaper.
1.6 ounce rate of silence or something like that. It's low rates.
1.92. But anyway, the point is use the lowest labeled rate. It's only going to cost you $3 or $4 an acre. It's cheap for bean leaf beetle control. Darren and I were talking off camera just a minute ago about Japanese beetle. It's another one we've started to see, and I just made the comment, yeah, Japanese beetle, the reason why guys are having problems is because they're used to using the low rate of insecticide. That doesn't do it for Japanese beetle. With this bug, you need the high rate, and then it's only marginal sometimes. So you've got to double your rate on any of the pyrethroids or Lorsban compared to what you would use for bean leaf beetles.
Well, how about another tough one, grasshoppers? We see some grasshoppers every year.
Yeah, but there, the size makes the difference. So if you had a little grasshopper, like at this time of the year, yeah, no problem with the low rate, no big issue. But if you get these big ones with wings that are adults, then you got an issue. Then you've got to step it up to the high rate.
Okay, and then let's talk about soybean aphids, because you know what? We do see some aphids, even on our farm in South Dakota, this time of year, some years. It depends on how much heat we've had. This year it's been fairly cool, so chances are we won't see them till a little bit later. But there's some areas of the country that are going to see some this early.
Yeah, we actually have had to spray on our farm in late June before. And, you know, I was really worried that year that we'd have to go back and spray later. We never did. We were right by some trees and where buckthorn is, where these aphids would overwinter. We sprayed that one time in late June, and that was it. We never had them come back. No problem. We kept scouting. The biggest thing that we'll tell you with soybean aphids, again, don't just spray automatically. Make sure they're there first. The other big issue is the threshold. 250, if you're listening to some of these people that tell you need 250 aphids, they're dead wrong. You absolutely have to spray before you have 250 aphids. I mean, if you want maximum yield. You know, if you don't mind giving up 5 or 10 bushels, go ahead. Spray when you got 250.
Well, maybe we want to feed the aphids for a little while.
That's ridiculous. I mean, 250 is way off. South Dakota State's done a bunch of research on this, and what they've shown is pretty much the same thing that we've always believed. When you're early in the season, you can spray when you have fewer. And when you get a little later in the season, let's say it's mid-August, well, you know what, now your threshold is bigger because you don't have nearly as much time until harvest. So even if they do damage it some, you know, a lot of the yield potential's already been set in your soybeans. The other thing you got to look at is what the price of insecticide is and what the price of soybeans is. And when we've got a high soybean price and a really cheap insecticide price, by the way, insecticide is cheaper than it was last year. So high bean price, low insecticide price. If you have 5 or 10 aphids per plant at flowering, you need to spray.
Okay, here's the other thing, residual control. And when we're talking about residual, yes, using a higher rate of insecticide will give you a little bit more residual, but in general, most of the residual control claims are a little bit overstated. So don't count on that you're going to get
45 days.
Yeah, don't count on that you're going to get 45 days worth of control. Just make some plans on your farm that, you know what, it's probably not going to last that long. So I do need to do things accordingly. Don't just say, I'm going to throw it in the tank because it's going to last me 45 days. No, make sure you've got some insects out there first. Use the products wisely as they're intended, and then you'll get a little bit of residual control. Hopefully you won't have to come back again.
Controlling insects in soybeans is really important to yield, but so is stopping our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you what it is coming up next.